All right. What is going on? Oh, it's live. It actually worked. The last two, we had like one of the last like couple that we've done where we had two people social live decided to like not work, and we kind of scrambled for all this stuff, but it looks like we're good. Everyone looking good, sounding good. All right. What's up, everyone? Welcome. Happy Monday. A lot of chatter over the last few days about hiring, onboarding, all the things that go into it. Some people like my VP of sales post yesterday. Others were not fans. But it turned out we got some buzz going, so that was good. So cool. So Amy, today we're going to talk about like everything. Like, where do you want to start? Do you want to start at like hiring and talent? Do we want to focus on that to start? Do we want to focus on kind of career development? Like, where do you think is a good place for us to start? I've got a ton of questions here from over the last few days from your posts and my posts. So we'll do a ton of Q&A, and I'll just kind of start where maybe you're feeling it. Like, is there an area, I don't know, today, like you feeling anything? You're like, man, Jake.
What am I feeling today? I think both of those are really important pieces, but they're two very different pieces. And when I think about the spirit, like what this was all about, in my mind, it always starts from the hiring side of things. And then it's like the building blocks of foundation. And the candidate side and the hiring side, those are two really important elements to that. So maybe we start there to break down the differences, because there's a lot of misconception. And sadly, there's a lot of talk about this across the interwebs with really bad advice or things that just don't work out so well. And so I was really excited to do this with you, because I feel like I want to use this platform to help people understand you're getting in the way of yourself. I don't care if it's an employer. I don't care if it's a candidate. Let's break that down. So maybe we start there. Jake, I don't know. What do you think? If this is your show.
No, dude, I'm down. I want you to be, I want to talk about where you feel. I mean, I make Kara send the question out, just so everyone knows. Every LinkedIn Live, I have Kara on our team. She sends out a question, and she asks everyone, what is the one thing that you're the best in the world at? And I try to focus there, right? I play to my strengths, and I talk about the things I know. I try not to talk about things that I don't know. So yeah, let's talk there. And just a few. So if this is the first LinkedIn Live of mine that you've joined, couple kind of quick things. One, we've got a bunch of questions, but you need to get involved. So drop your questions in the comments. If you like something that I say, or you disagree with something that I say or Amy says, feel free to drop that in too, etc. You know, if you want to hijack the comments, I really don't give a shit there either. Whatever you want to do. And so, or if you like something that Amy says, hit the like button or the heart button or the thoughtful one, whatever your favorite LinkedIn Live emoji is, or LinkedIn emoji. There's only like 5. And they're pretty basic. So it's like you can either be thinking, you had an epiphany, you liked it, there's a heart. Is that it? I think that's it. So Amy, so there you go. Amy wants the heart. When Amy says something smart, ooh, this rhymes. You give her the heart. That's great. I'll take whatever. I don't care. That's good. All right, cool. So why don't you start there? Why don't you just give me kind of your thoughts around like that topic to start? I've got a ton of questions. The only way to see the comments, unfortunately, Amy, is if you have a separate screen up that has the LinkedIn Live on it. That's it. Oh. So I'll feed it in. Kara feeds it into that little sheet that she sent you to. So you'll see any new comments or questions pop into that sheet that she sent to.
Got it. Okay.
All right. So let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about like expectations, right? Or showing up. Like, what are the things that you think if people, let's start on the candidate side. Right? You're trying to get a job. You're in sales. You're in sales leadership. What do you need to know?
So I think before you do anything, before it's time to even make a decision to hire. So most ideal in the startup community at varying stages. And I think what people oftentimes do is they read an article, or they go to an event, or they read the latest on what you do in SaaS. And they use that as like the be all and end all. So I got funding. The very first thing that I should do is just go out and hire a bunch of bodies. And
that's what you got to do. You got to throw some bodies at it.
That's what you do. And especially it's interesting because I just had a conversation a week ago with a technical founder, and I gave him major praise where I said, I wish other people could hear this conversation because you're being really thoughtful and intentional. So they have a lot of funding, but when it comes to going upstream, which is what they're trying to do, they're trying to make the change from SMB to not even mid-market. They're hopping over that and they're going into the enterprise. He's not just hiring a bunch of people because he's got money and because they think that they have product market fit. So let's just go and see what happens. Right. He wants to continue to validate it. And he's very much involved in that. And he's like, as a technical founder, I don't understand sales. I don't speak that sales language. And truth be told, I made a couple of bad sales hires to try to do this, and it's really hurt us. And I want to be able to learn from that before I do anything else. So in my mind, I think it's what stage are you? Right? So seed stage, A round, B round, C round, D, E, F, I don't care what it is. Each thing and why that's happening and why you're getting money doesn't necessarily mean that it's time to just go out and hire a cohort of people and whoever is going to do well is going to be the cream that rises to the top and everybody else sucks. I hate that mentality. So like first and foremost, that's the wrong thing to do, is just hiring groups and think that you're not going to support them and they're just here to figure it out. And whoever figures it out is going to be your best people. I just think that's really irresponsible. So it starts with, in my mind, being super intentional of what stage are you really at? What is the market really saying to you? I read this study from the Startup Genome Report that founders take 2 to 3x longer to validate their idea than what they originally anticipate. And if they're not in tune with that, or they don't realize that, and they start going out into the market and they start hiring people, and I hear this all the time, like I was hired to build this thing out, but the product wasn't ready. And so I'm sitting here and I'm twiddling my thumbs.
That's right.
So it's like, is it really time to hire? Like that's step one, is like, what is really happening in your business? Forget about how you SaaS or how you do a startup or how you do an A round or how you do your funding. It's really about your buyer will always speak louder than this LinkedIn Live, than anybody else. What are they telling you? And is it really time to invest in the hiring process? Because in my opinion, especially in enterprise sales, if you screw that up and you're doing it in front of your buyer, you're going to get more doors shut that are a lot harder to open than just taking your time and doing it the right way to scale the right way. So that's where it's going.
Yeah, I think, and I'll give you kind of like my take on it. I think one, people think that they found product market fit when they've got like 5 or 10 customers. Like my friends, that's not product market fit, right? Yeah. Like until you get to $1 million in recurring revenue, you're at the beginning of thinking you have product market fit, right? Everyone should read Jeff Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm, where he talks about selling to innovators and early adopters and then majority. And I think that that's it, is that you start to do forecasts for hiring and forecasts for revenue based off of early sales that were to a very small subset of your potential TAM, total addressable market. And then you just continue. The issue that I see, Amy, is that even if it's about when they hire, like let's say they actually hire the first 5 or 10 people, it's that they get false positives on scaling too. It's that they didn't realize that they were just selling to this little pocket here because their board deck says that the market was a $13 billion market, and they're not actually even selling to that 13. They're selling only to the early adopters. And I think when I go in and we're working with companies that are at that scaling phase, a lot of it is, again, like what are the leading indicators? Like, do you have anything that's repeatable in your business that shows that there's a repeatability in the sales motion, so then you can have somewhat repeatability in the hiring process, and then making sure that you're reevaluating your hiring profile every year, 2 years, six months early on, because the needs you have of an individual today are different than 6 months or 12 months. And so I think to just kind of expand on that, it's really important to think about being purposeful, not just, in those first hires, but it's when you scale too. Are you scaling based off of, metrics that actually aren't applicable to this like next phase of growth?
Well, there's something written about like, so 70% of startups fail, and it's because they tried to scale too early, right? Like their version to what you're talking about, super excited about, especially in the enterprise. I can't tell you, when I'm getting to know potential clients, I bet my clients just as much as I would bet anybody I'd bring their way. And I know my ICP, and I'm really good with that. But when I'm getting to know people and they're like, yeah, so we're going to do enterprise. I'm like, well, what does that actually mean? And this is, I think we're going into questions that people ask, like, what do I need to know as a candidate? So I'm crossing over there a little bit. But it's like, well, can you quantify or qualify what that actually means? And so many people are like, well, we got a lead from McDonald's in on our website, and that's enterprise. We're ready for enterprise. Intent is being expressed of interest, and we need to really map this out and expand on it. And it's like, well, do you realize that McDonald's actually has a big franchise part of their business as well? And maybe it was a franchise owner that wants to talk about how you could help them. So I think perception versus reality isn't necessarily there. And just because there's we were talking about this before we got on to the LinkedIn Live, there is so much money flying around right now. It's really easy to not even have a real product or any sort of fit and get $3 million to try to validate that. And because then you read some article about, well, you get money, and so you start hiring. It's like this flywheel that's then, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, and actually we've got a question here from Sam Collin, which I think is a good one. And again, everyone, remember, keep dropping your questions in the comments. We've got just under 100 people now. So what's up, everyone? Thanks for joining. So Sam asks, how does the company then deal with the pressure, right? Because look, a lot of what you and I are saying makes common sense, right? But then guess what? You got $3 million. Then you get 10, then you get 50. And so his question is, how do you deal with the pressure of your investors and VCs to scale sales and grow revenues? That is a perfect question, Sam, for like where we're at right now. So how do you think about that, Amy? How do you think about dealing with the pressure of the VCs versus, what you may want to do or what you think is prudent?
I think it goes way before you get any money. I have conversations with startup founders all the time, and it's like they're proud that they've got 30 term sheets. And it's like, that doesn't really mean anything. Are you aligned? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, well, are you aligned? Because I don't care whose money it is or how much money it is. The second you take somebody else's money, you're now accepting the fact that they're helping you write the rules.
That's exactly it.
So I think before you start succumbing into anybody's pressure, it's the same thing for what I tell people when they're looking for the job. It's the same thing that I tell people when they're looking for the hire. It's the same thing here of what is it that you are really trying to do, and why is it that you really need money, and who is it that you're getting the money from, and what is their expectation? Have you talked to other portfolio companies of what it's like with the pressure cooker? What is the expectation? Are they giving you a long leash, or is it you hire who we tell you to hire? And by the way, I can't tell you how much bad hiring comes from bad advice from the money tree. So, Sam, not to not answer your question, but this does answer your question. Before you, I think it
answers it for sure. I mean, I think that what you're hitting on is that you're gonna. A lot of you companies are gonna raise money. It's gonna happen. And I think what you're getting in is really, how do you make sure, again, it's smart money or it's like the right money for you? So I think it fits for sure.
Jake, by the way, real quick gut check. I'm getting a bunch of comments saying they can't get into the link or it's not working. Is there a place where people can go to see this on LinkedIn? How would they do that?
They should be going to my post. Like, Kara, did you drop in the event, the link to the LinkedIn Live? What's up? Here, come in. I'm trying to figure it out for you. Hold on.
Sorry, I just want to make sure that people can get in because I'm getting knocks on my door.
I'll let you invite people anymore, so we can't use them, so nobody knows about them. But I can put it where do you want me to put it?
Where are people not seeing it? If they go to if you go to if you're already on the LinkedIn Live, you've already figured it out. So kudos to you. But Amy, for everyone else, if they just go to my posts, if they just go to my profile, there's literally a post that's live right now, and you just click into the post. So you can copy and paste the link. And if you want, why don't you copy and paste it in the social live for her, and then she can share it. So then you can share it too.
Thank you.
I gotcha. That's all right.
Sam, back to you.
Yeah, we're talking about smart money.
Mm-hmm. Well, and who do you get into bed with, right? Are you whoring yourself out, or are you being really selective about who you want to be engaged with, right? Just because I go on a lot of dates doesn't mean I'm going to marry everybody. So the same rules apply. I love the dating analogy. I think a lot of people do, but it's like, and I use this analogy often, and it's so applicable for hiring. It's so applicable for this. It's like, how many of us have been on a date with somebody that's super attractive and it's going really well, and you're like, I want to spend more time, and all of the things in your mind are like, oh my gosh, this person's super attractive. I want to go on another date. I want to spend more time. I want to make out with them later. This is awesome. And then all of a sudden, 10 dates later, because you didn't ask any of the questions that are really important to you about what that mate might look like, you realize that they live in their parents' basement. They're $800,000 in debt. That's not really your mate. It's the same thing here. It's like the number one piece of advice, and I'm looking at all the questions and I've seen what people are asking. I am amazed and perplexed at how many people take a backseat approach to scaling their business, to funding their company, and to their own personal career. They're afraid to ask questions. They are intimidated to be able to raise their hand and say, I don't understand. I read this online. How are you solving for that? They feel like it's going to take something away from them. And my thing is, and yes, I'm a confident person, but if you're afraid to ask something, or you can't get a straight answer, or people refuse, what are you doing there anyway? Like, that's the biggest red flag.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think a lot of people up front in the negotiation process feel like they have zero leverage, or that, it's not okay. And so they shy away from it. They're so grateful to have the opportunity. They're so grateful to, or think that they're grateful to have it. And I think it's plus, look, in sales, sometimes like we're a little insecure at times, I think. And plus it's like, oh, what if they say no? And, do I really have? And it's like, well, no, you kind of do have the leverage. Like if they're at the offer stage, like you've got the leverage, and you need to think, you need to be thinking about how this stuff plays out over time. Again, it goes back to, look at the average tenure of a sales rep at a company. Look at the average tenure of a director, a VP, manager, it doesn't matter. And then just understand it's probably going to be you. I'm sure, I think a lot of people go into these jobs thinking that they'll be the exception. And that's what happens, is that, Amy, they avoid those questions because they don't want to rock the boat early on. They're like, well, I know this other person struggled, but I'll be able to do it. So they don't negotiate. They're like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together, etc. And like, sure, but you need to have some of that convo up front. So, all right. So let's go into some of these other questions. So we've got some folks. I'm just going to pull up some ones from before. Both your thoughts on training. Yeah, let's talk a little about training and onboarding, right? So we've got Belinda. Belinda had asked this question. What's up, Belinda? I know you're out there doing some sales consulting training as well too. So talking about thoughts on training to keep employees satisfied. We had another question here. Let's see, what was it? Yeah, talking about like basically getting people up to speed, making sure that they're successful. So tell me how you think, when the companies that you work with, what are the ones that are doing this right? Like, what are the core, either the core elements or maybe even how their programs are structured? So again, you talked about in this very beginning, don't bring people on too early, right? So, okay, I'm not going to bring people on too early, or I'm not going to scale too quickly. I've got my first 10, 20, whatever, and I'm not going to ramp it. What do you need to have in place from a training and onboarding standpoint? Whether that's initial experience or ongoing.
So I think first and foremost, it's equally important to hire right as it is to take care of those hires after you've invested all that time to get them in the first place.
Right.
So first and foremost, that should be a priority. Training and onboarding are very different things in my mind. So onboarding, in my opinion, is what happens when you start, right? It's for a very specific period of time. And in my mind, I think so there's technology for this. If you have an applicant tracking system or things along those lines, you can really map that out. There's other ways to do it. You could do it in Trello. You could do it in Airtable. You could do it in Basecamp. You could do it within Google Sheets. Like, there's all sorts of different ways that you can map out your process. So I think it's about having checklists of when the offer is made, what happens immediately from there? And I can't tell you how many times people botch up their hiring process because they're like, well, we sent off the paperwork, we did the background check, we did the references, we've got the signed offer, and we've established a start date. And 2 days before the person starts, they're like, yeah, thanks, I'm going to stay put, or I went with this other offer, and they're dumbfounded, like, what happened? So I think it's about a cadence, and I hate that word, but I'm going to use it here, of communication that is super collaborative between whomever is going to be involved in the hiring and onboarding process with that candidate. I've seen some really great companies involve other people in that sort of critical period between.
Oh, you have to. Yep, have to.
So other people like me that maybe have been in the role now for a year that can talk about what it was really like, and maybe you meet for coffee. What this doesn't mean is do not overwhelm your new hire by sending them every single access to every single Slack channel, and here's all the stuff that we're working on, and they're still rounding out or finishing out what they've been doing, and you want them to be fresh for you. I think it's totally cool to say, hey, here's a highlight of what we're working on. If you have time, take a look at it just to get your mind in the game, or if they're asking you for it, great. But don't just data dump, because that overwhelms somebody and they don't really know what to do with that anyway because they haven't started with you yet. So first and foremost, it's about that communication in between that time. But then it's checklists. So on day one, what does that look like? How many of us, and I know we can't see with everybody, you start on day one and you're sitting in the lobby waiting for somebody to get you, and then you're stuck in security for like 10 hours, and your computer isn't available for 3 weeks because it's on back order, or you get somebody's crappy old computer that just quit and all the stuff is still on the computer.
That happens.
This isn't even onboarding. Like, this is just like housekeeping in my mind. But onboarding is, here's what we covered throughout the interview process. And people don't do this as much, but if you're doing DISC assessments or any sort of assessment, there's a wealth of information there that shouldn't just be we hire, we don't hire, off on switch. It gives you a wealth of information about that individual. And what people are craving the most is, what is the road ahead for me to continue to grow and thrive? And I want to feel a bit of customization, not just go through the Amy Volas car wash of here's what it's like to work at Avenue Talent Partners. Yep. Yes, that needs to be there, but also based on what's important to me and what's important to you and why we both decided to come together, what might that look like now and through the future? So training in my mind is, here's our product, here's who's involved, here's what our landscape looks like. Depending on what the sales role is, sometimes it's more intensive, sometimes it's not. Here's sales training. Here's the stuff that you need. Onboarding is like, what do you need to navigate the complexity or not, or whatever the dynamics are of the organization that you're joining. So who does what, where, when, how? What is your role? Who's involved? What do you go to, or who do you go to for what? Those kinds of things. And then training in my mind is something that never stops, right? Like, it's like, what investment are you making into your employees to figure out what they need coming through day one or week one, month 3, month 6, month 12, and what are they asking you for? And this isn't just for, by the way, salespeople. There is a complete lack of leadership management training. And so what does that look like? Right? How are you investing in your leaders to make them be the best version of themselves? So that's how I look at it. And all this stuff, again, can be managed in checklists and spreadsheets and technology. There's lots of different tools out there.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is documenting. And I think that if I could boil a lot of this down for founders or sales leaders, it's document ruthlessly. So everything that you need, whether it's your playbook, et cetera, and also, again, like to your point, is making sure that people have a centralized reference point. And so that to me is another thing for scaling. Like, you shouldn't scale or can't scale if you don't have a documented training and initial training, and then just thinking about what are the 4 week, 8 weeks, 5 months. These are all things. Just sit down for a day. You can come up with a pretty good schedule. What we do with all of our clients and what we do internally is, for your first week, and sometimes depending on the role, 2 weeks, every hour of every day you have a home. And I think it creates an experience where you're not like, wait, where am I going, etc. Oh, Johnny was supposed to meet with me, but now he's got a meeting that ran long. That never happens at our company, ever. Like if that happens, like that's like onboarding for people and their first experience is one of my like most things that I will lose my shit on over. If we don't have a process, if someone's starting, I don't care if they're like an intern or they're an SVP or a partner, that there's just no excuse for it. Like you spent all this time to recruit, find, interview, onboard these people, and they show up for their first few weeks and it's like, figure it out. Like don't ever go to a company where your first week is figure it out, quit immediately.
Well,
maybe not,
that is a big sort of excuse, quite honestly, that leaders make of being in a startup. That's what it's like to be scrappy. You've got to have grit.
Oh, that's right.
Figure it out, right? And
be scrappy. Be scrappy. No, that means you're lazy. Stop being lazy and document things so you can set people up for success and to scale. Like that's how I look at it. It's like I feel like too many people are lazy.
Totally. And if you're like, well, what do I do? Right? I have employees and I want to make it better. I look at this as an iterative process as well. The best thing that you can do is talk to your employees, right? Ask them real questions. Look for the themes. So when you were getting up to speed, when it was your first couple of weeks, what did you love? What did you hate? Yeah. And listen to that and apply.
That's what we did. Yeah.
You know, and it's like you keep getting better because you're listening versus I'm going to tell you what I think you should do. Oh, and by the way, I'm such a busy founder. My hands are in so many pots, and that's welcome to startup life. This is how it is.
That's how it is. Deal with it.
Yeah. And it's like, I live and die by this saying, what you put in is what you get out. If you are just haphazardly bringing somebody on and you haven't thought about anything at all as to what that process is going to look like, what to expect, who's involved, to make sure, to your point on your watch, this stuff doesn't happen. If you're not doing that, it starts from the top down. Who else is going to do that? And you're leaving so much room for error.
It takes them 6 months to get up to speed, 8 months to get up to speed. If you would just spend a little bit of time documenting this, for all my sales leaders out there, document everything. And then I'm telling you, when people are saying, Jake, look, we have a rep productivity standpoint. Our reps are taking 6 months to ramp and we need them to take 4, or whatever. I'm like, okay, great. How much is documented? A lot of it. What's your training and onboarding? Go sit with Amy. Like your training and onboarding is go sit with Amy. Like my friends, that's not how we learn. We need a mix of like real life, classroom, and then like shadowing. Shadowing is like the least like how we learn. Like document all the best practices. Like that's what I don't get. It's like, it's just documentation. Go hire someone to like listen to your calls and transcribe it. Like that'll work. Yeah. Like that.
Well, and there's a reason why companies like Lessonly are doing really well. Like it's like it's not just something that you do, it's an investment. And if you're not willing to invest in your employees, I'm not really sure. Like you're only as good as the people
I get it.
You. So
I believe it. I believe it 100%.
Yeah, same.
All right. So everyone, if you're on LinkedIn Live or Instagram Live now, what's up everyone on Instagram? Again, make sure drop the like button. How many people we got in here now? How many people have tuned in to hear Amy's wisdom? Did I try it? Right at 100. All right. It's good. So we got about 100 people. Make sure to like, share your questions in the comments. So Amy, I've got a bunch of questions I want to try to get through, like quasi rapid fire. Ready? Okay. Michelle Timms. So if a company just has one person selling, the founder, and you aren't at 1 million yet, and I'm getting pressure to start selling now when I'm aware that they don't have the capital raised until March, how do I respond? He's decided to cover my business expenses to help him get there. Is that okay for me to start onboarding as a sales rep and then back out and start hiring people after we hit 1 million in goal? So he's asking, or she is asking about when to ramp, understanding there's a little bit of pressure that's already happening. She's in the situation. Sorry, Amy, I didn't listen to your LinkedIn Live with Jake. I'm in it. What do you suggest that someone does that's in the situation right now?
So there's a lot going on in that question, and I'm not really sure what the real question is. There's a lot that's happening there. So I think first and foremost, you got yourself into the situation.
Yeah.
Is the question like, do you understand the question, Jay? Because I don't. I'm not really sure what that question is.
I think the key is like there's one person that's selling. They've got like a little bit of runway. You know, after, no, you can hire, just so you know, Michelle, like, no, you can hire way, way, way before 1 million, like hire way before that. It's more like, do you know if you can scale past that? So I wouldn't stress about that 1 million number that I gave you. I think she was just asking around, like, when, like, if you're already in a situation, you're getting that pressure to hire, how do you deal with that? Like, do I just go ahead and hire somebody? Do I not hire somebody? Do I say, yes, sorry, board, I know I committed to it? I mean, the answer is probably like, well, look, you kind of got to do it at this point. Like, you kind of got to do it and then ruthlessly document in the month of March. You know, like, hire, set the person up, you know, but to start April 1, and then use March to start to like document everything and get everything like somewhat repeatable for them. That would be my advice.
Well, and if there's a question there, it means that she's not comfortable with something, right? So without having put on this, I don't know what you're not comfortable with, Michelle, but I would say whatever it is that you're not comfortable with or that you're scared of, I like to be really well prepared when I'm trying to state my case. So instead of just going in and being like, I don't want to hire, we're not ready, it's too early.
That's right.
And not saying that you're saying this, Michelle, but if that's the case, I like to come really well prepared to say, here's the stage that we're at. Here's what's happened in the territory. Here's what our total addressable market looks like. Here's the number of accounts. If we're going to hire, this is what I would envision. So like, come with a solution of
bring the math. I love it.
Versus just being like, okay, we're just going to go hire. Like, I'm just going to do this. It's like, okay, I can do this. You got it. No problem. Here's what the market's saying. Here's what it looks like. Here's what our backyard looks like. And here's the space that I think this hire could occupy. What do you think? And then you have that collaborative discussion. So you're not just order taking, you're getting that seat at the table.
And it's a great way to also get more hires if you think you should hire more people. You're like, look, here's our number that you had us to hit. Here's our average sales price. Here's our average sales cycle, right? Here's where we're at now. I got to hire 3 people. Tim, you tell me how I don't hire 5 people right now. And when we get to quota, like, here's the math. So it works with a lot of clients, you know, we tell them the reverse. So Kevin Mulrain has a good question here. What are your thoughts on a probation period for new hires? Goals, KPIs, objectives for 90 days. After 90 days, make a decision, in or out. Thoughts on a promotion or probation period for somebody?
I hate it.
Hate it. Why?
I think that it sets the stage. I get why people do it, right? But I think it sets the stage. So somebody that I know really well is like, I'm on this probationary period, and if they're willing to get rid of me, I'm not willing to invest myself into it. There's psychology that goes into that. Like, what is it that you're really telling that person? Like, and by the way, in 3 months, what if this is for enterprise sales?
Yeah, well, what if it's a 6-month sales cycle, or even if it's a 3-month sales cycle? Like, yeah, no, I mean, 90 days is a bit ridiculous. There's probably some like there's probably like some where that, but no, yeah, 90 days feels a little.
Well, and by the way, from HR law, the majority of the states that we all live in, depending on which one you're in, it's at will employment. You can fire somebody anyway. Yeah. So it's like, why start out on that icky note of like Big Brother's watching you and we're waiting for the left shoe to, like, it's just like gross to me. So yeah, not a fan.
All right, I'll cast my vote no as well too. All right, next question, Jeff Walter. What's going on, Jeff? How can we overcome age discrimination barriers as past successful and experienced applicants? What causes the lack of a look from a hiring manager, and how can we overcome? Ooh, this is a good one. This is a really good one. All right, Amy, I'll take this one first, and then I'll pass it to you. Yeah. Okay, so I think there's a couple of things. What a lot of people are actually looking at when you think about age discrimination, they're looking at your career progression. And what they're doing is they're saying, look, if Jeff, I can't pull up your LinkedIn profile right now, or I would, if they consistently see someone who's had the exact same role over and over and over again, or similar roles, and one of their corporate initiatives, like let's say, for example, at Skaled, one of our core values is always growing. I am a horrible boss for you if you don't want to grow. This is not the right place. Not for you, Jeff. Guess what? For you, you could be constantly growing. And so this could be a great place, whether you're 65 or 25. I don't give a shit. But I think a lot of people see stagnation as a negative. That's my hot take. So I think, you know, for you, Jeff, maybe your resume or your story isn't that one of growth. And that's off-putting to certain groups of people, right? Myself included. That if you're consistently taking a job for a little bit better pay, then guess how you're going to probably leave me? For a little bit more pay, right? So I don't care if you're 55 or 45. And so I think it's all about the stage of company that you're at. But for me, like, that's it. It's like, what's the story you're telling? And that could be part of it. I don't know. Maybe. Depends. I didn't look at Jeff's profile. So what are your thoughts?
I think it's certainly like how we tell our own story makes or breaks what happens, right? It's always an invitation for a conversation or not. But what I will say, and it does break my heart, there is a major age discrimination problem that we have in our society. I hear about it every day. I talk to clients and potential clients several times a day. And when I'm getting to know people, I ask them questions like, hey, so when you think about hiring, and I'm not HR and I'm not the law, but I'm curious, what do you know your limits are? Like, if I send you this kind of person, and I don't know what that looks like for you, what's the big no for you? So this will be a separate topic. Job hopping is number one. So for all of my friends talking about how glamorous job hopping is, wait till the market turns. So we'll talk about that. But that's one. Two is anybody over 40, they're lazy now. And these are not my words. This is the data that I get from hundreds of conversations.
I think what you're saying, I don't think anyone, the things you're saying are anything people haven't heard or have been around people that have vocalized it.
So there's an assumption. So it's not even about growth progression. It's about, because I would argue respectfully that I want to be the best that I can be with what I love doing. Maybe I don't want to be a leader. Maybe I want to always be in sales. And my growth is about carving out a different territory, bringing a different product to market, doing something different. My title's going to read the same, but the work that I did.
Exactly.
And so I think that goes back to what you're talking about, Jake, of how do you tell your story? But I think, sadly, people get automatically bucketed into it's your victory lap, right? Like, this is where you're about to go out to pasture and that's it. I'm a big fan of meritocracy and about the sum of someone's parts. I think that for the first time that people aren't even realizing, we have 5 generations working in the workforce together. And what each one of us wants or how we work or what we do is different. And so I think, how do you solve for that? You look for companies that talk a lot about that you can see on their website, that it's not just a bunch of white dudes, right? Like that are all 25. So you look for that and you start there. And this is a complex situation that I'm glad it was brought up, but age is a real big problem. And I don't have all the answers for how to fix it beyond talking about it and acknowledging that it's a problem.
Yeah, I think you're right. And just look at when you go to their team, is the only people who are executives, people over the age of 40. And like, I don't know, it could be a precursor. So Brian Carr will ask a follow-up. What's up, Brian? And I think, look, for anyone trying to growth hack in B2B, or if you're trying to grow in B2B, these questions, like these are a lot. I mean, again, like this whole idea of like, look, if you're trying to find people still motivated, et cetera, maybe it's that person who's looking for that second chapter, So again, I think a lot of, especially early on, we've got kind of this mindset of what we want. Brian said he was recently asked how it could feel working with a bunch of people younger than me. I was recently asked how I would feel working with a bunch of people younger than me. Is that an appropriate question? No, that's not an appropriate question. There's like 800 different ways you could have phrased that to ask the exact same question without phrasing it that way. So no, they should have just said, like, how do you feel about working with people that are less experienced than you? That would be the alternative to that. Still not a great question. But
about the people that you work with, how do you describe that when you're operating on all cylinders? Walk me through what that looks like.
I like that. Yeah, right.
I mean, it's like, but it's basically saying, we think you're old.
That's right. I mean,
young people. So how do you feel about that? Like, right?
I know I'm laughing because like, it's true. It is that you're asking that question for sure. And I think that that's it, is that, you know, people look for, people, I think at this point, they're kind of used to seeing through the questions. All right. So we've got time here for maybe like 3 or 4 questions, and we've got a lot. We had a lot from before. We had a lot of people chiming in. Keep your questions coming. We'll try to DM you later or try to get you the questions. Let's go with Chris Turner's. I think this is a good one. He says, in the UK, heavy regulated products, companies are unable to fire people for poor sales performance. So, but let's, and maybe I can make this like equivalent for my US counterparts. Maybe you've got a small team and you've got some like enterprise reps, right? Where you're nervous about firing them. Or in the UK, for example, I mean, by the way, you can fire people in the UK, like you can, but it just takes longer. It's just more like because they don't have like the concept of employee at will. So his question really is, how do you hire talented salespeople with a great track record in the first place? So let's rewind and let's go back to like, and again, if I think about, look, if you're trying to hack, you're trying to grow in 2020, this is the question for you. My answer is a ruthless interview process that is highly documented. So for us, we have a very, very specific interview process that we follow. There's a phone screen. There's usually, and then again, depending on the role, there's a phone screen, a manager screen, a skills interview, and an experience interview. There's an amazing book called Who by a guy named Jeff Smart. His dad wrote a book called Top Grading. We literally just institutionalized that, and it's made me a better like hiring person. So for me, Chris, ruthless interviewing. Be okay that the butt's not in the seat for another month or 2 months. It's going to hurt, but man, it's going to hurt a lot more whenever it's someone that you got to you're stuck with, especially like the UK for 5 or 6 months. So interviewing is my big one. What else, Amy? What else do you think, if they're trying to be more meticulous about hiring, or maybe do you have some like interview go-tos or things that you feel like, hey, these are things I've had a lot of success with in hiring salespeople?
Scorecard. That's like, I mean, for anybody that follows me, they know I'm going to bring that up. So, and that came from me getting it wrong in my own world and being like, I don't ever want to do that again.
So many times.
So, you know, the big thing about the scorecard is we start telling ourselves different stories, and the stories that we want to hear. And I call it the chasing the shiny object syndrome of, we'll figure it out later, but they're telling me that they're going to give me $50,000 more in my base, and they're going to do all these things. I'm going to get rich and it's going to be great. And, you know what, don't worry about the numbers. We've got enough runway. Like it's like nobody can get specific with me, but yet I need to get specific with them. So the great thing about the scorecard is, and it goes back to like that dating analogy of it's really easy to get seduced. The great thing about a scorecard, if you're being honest with yourself and you've taken account into of the things that are really important to you, when you've done your best work, what does that look like? What you've hated, what does that look like? How you describe leadership, how you describe your team, how you describe the products that you get excited about, whatever it might be. We all have things that are more or less important to us. That all carries a weight or score. Same thing for hiring managers. Yeah. And the great thing about a scorecard for hiring managers is, how many of us have been in interviews where it's like some rando person is pulled in because you had to go on a conference call and they're like, I don't even know who you are or like why I'm interviewing here.
Dude, sometimes we have to do that, and like and we haven't prepped that person too, and I'm just like, that is so bad. Like I know it's bad too, but we do it sometimes too.
The crazy thing though is that person then has a voice. And that person's like, I didn't like them. And it's like, no. I'm not going to like you because you didn't come prepared. You wasted my time. I took time out of my day to be here. Like, no, it goes both ways. And so what I like about the scorecard for hiring managers is it keeps them more accountable of who is involved, what's everyone's role. And we're all looking at this from our own same unique view, but the same criteria, and we can talk about it as we're digesting together. So I'm a huge fan of the scorecard to cut through a lot of that nonsense, to not just get caught up in the shiny objects. So many hiring managers, they get caught up in, I'm going to hire this person. They went to President's Club like 10 times.
They worked at Salesforce, Amy. Yes, John's a killer.
Such a quota, but what they didn't realize is that person just inherited a book and didn't have to do much.
They weren't actually a hunter in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. So,
do you have a scorecard you can share? Do you have one? Do you have like a version?
I do.
All right. Yeah. Hit me up. If we can, hit up Amy, or if you can maybe even, Amy, have someone hit up Kara with it. We can share it in the comments too. And then Kara, we have one. It's called Scorecard. You can hit up Lauren, and we have our scorecard template, and just ask Lauren to make sure it's publicly viewable. So yeah, we have like the scorecards, what we do too, because you want to eliminate groupthink. Like what I never have, and people know this, like if the very first question that when everyone gets in a room is they go, what do you think? Then you're screwed. Like if that's it, as opposed to like people had a purpose for why they were doing interviews, you know, like as like, hey, I'm looking for these sets of skills or whatever it is, then that's better. All right. So we got time for two more here. Okay. Let's see. All right. So this is a good one. So David Sherry asked this ahead of time. He said, what do you think are levers one should pull and avoid in upfront negotiations? So kind of going back to negotiations, if you talked about it too, hey, you should advocate for yourself. What do you think are some of the levers that you have or that you're going to give up on?
I think every situation is different, and I'm a big fan of cards face up on the table, and I don't like waiting to have these discussions at the 11th hour when emotions are running really high.
Yeah.
So if you're doing it the right way, in my opinion, it should just be a conversation. It shouldn't be a negotiation, because you've been talking about this throughout the process, so that you're not wasting my time, I'm not wasting yours. And there's like this weird thing of like, I've got to give to get to give, like give something up. Like I hate that.
Yeah.
It's like, here's where I am. Here's what it takes to get me. Here's what I'm walking away from. Are we even on the same page, right? Like, let's talk about that. And I'm not saying you start out in the first conversation guns a-blazing with that, but it's something that I talk about early and often with every single one of our candidates throughout the entire process. And it's something that we talk about with our clients too. And I will tell you, I don't have issues that blow up at the 11th hour. And if I do, it's because people aren't being honest with me, and I don't have time for that anyway. Yeah. So it's like, I know I sound hardcore, but it really goes back. You talk about process. That's one step of it. I'm talking about collaborative, proactive, non-divisive communication. And I know that's really hard for a lot of people, but if you feel like you can't do that with the company that you're interviewing with, that's a problem too, right? So it goes back to like, look for the tells. If you can't have a real conversation, what's it going to be like when you really work there? That's
it. That's exactly it. All right. So we've got time. We're going to just do a couple more here. I saw one, personality or assessment test. Yes, no, why?
I love them if they are utilized the right way. So I'm a huge fan of DISC. I'm a strong DI. If use Crystal knows it's right.
I know, as well
right?
Too. I bet you'd never know that.
I like it a whole lot. I have seen clients and old clients and potential clients use them as off-on switches. Like there's this mentality of like, I want to find everything that's wrong with somebody versus being open-minded to understanding what somebody brings to the table. If you have that mindset of, I want to look for everything that's wrong, you shouldn't use an assessment, because you're going to point out all this stuff instead of being like, oh, wait, you know what? They struggle with this one thing. I want to talk about that to better understand it. That's not a deal breaker for me, but I just need to know contextually like how this came out. It's also really a valuable tool, like we talked about before, of using that as an anchor for onboarding and training for the long haul.
That's it. That's exactly it. Assessment test also helps you there. It lets you know as a leader, what am I getting myself into? Okay, look, Jake's not the best problem solver. Cool. I can work with that. Now I know like I'm going to need to explain things maybe a couple of times, right? Like, all right. So because of time, we've got a lot of other questions. Everyone, I'm sorry. So here's what I want you to do, right? A couple of things. One, LinkedIn Lives are kind of a pain in the ass to find. So if you tag yourself or tag your team or something in there, then it makes it easier. Or if you go to my posts or YouTube, and Kara will drop the link in for YouTube, you can access this. DM me or DM Amy your questions. We will do our best to tackle the ones that we don't get to. So I want to end on this because it's kind of the end of the end of the road. If I had told Caleb, I would queue up some Boys to Men right now. Amy, I don't know. You might remember Boys to Men. I don't know if you. That's how we used to end. End of the road is how you ended like your mixer dances.
Yeah,
like,
I like it.
And you'd have your hands like they had to be like this.
Like,
you know what I'm talking about? So when it is the end of the road, like how do you know it's time for a divorce? How do you know it's time to leave? What are some of the things that you think, like when you think about this, like when it's the right time to leave or when you should like pick your head up and think about the right time to leave?
Yeah. So it's that like, should I stay? Should I go?
Yeah.
Kind of thing happening. I think, first of all, you need to give yourself some grace, right? Any of us in sales, we have bad weeks, we have bad days, we have bad quarters. And for some of us in enterprise sales, we have bad years, right? Like, so I think it's about who are you surrounding yourself with to have real discussions. So I have an advisory team, and it's no more than like 3 to 5 people that I know will shoot me really straight to be like,
I love that.
You have a bad freaking quarter, stop it. Because it's that thing again of the story that we tell ourselves and start building up a case. And it's really easy to do that in this marketplace where turnover is so high and opportunities are endless. You get approached all the time by new roles, and it's really easy to be like, oh, screw this, I'm out. Somebody just told me recently, like, there's going to be some change that happens. I'm like, well, what's that change? I don't know, but it's time to go. I'm like, why is it time to go? Right?
Yeah.
Yet. So I think it's about taking an audit approach of, is this just a bad quarter?
That's right.
And not getting all bad decisions, or not all, but many of them are rooted in fear. I'm afraid that I'm going to get a new boss and that person's going to suck, and what's going to happen? Well, that's what's the deal. So I think it's about understanding the current landscape and then trying to make it better. Give yourself credit for the fact that you went to this company, you went there for a reason. Can any of those things be fixed? And see what your ability is to use your voice and how that's received. Can you solve some of these problems? And know that.
And be a part of that change. Be an agent of change.
Yes. Don't assume. And then if all those things, like you've tried all of that and your comp plan, I mean, this has happened to me where it's like, we're going to take away all of your accounts and we're going to increase your number by 4x and we're going to reduce your comp plan by 80%.
Yeah.
I tried to fix it. You can't change it. I ultimately decided to leave because it wasn't just about the comp. It was about the other broken bits and pieces that were bigger than me, that I fought for almost 2 quarters to change, and it didn't change. And so for me personally, that's when it's time to go. So I think you need to give yourself an opportunity to fix it.
Yeah, I love that you just hit that up, which is like, you know, look, guys, as your company scales, they're going to change your comp plan. Like, just roll with it. You know, it's like, it happens. You're there for more than that. I think that's such a good call out. You know, for me, I think there's a couple of moments. I think like the 9-month and the 18-month mark. At the 9-month mark, you just start getting a little bit dangerous at your job. You're like, I kind of know what I'm doing. And then, you know, you kind of get, I think, like a little full of yourself. Like at the 18-month mark is when I see a lot of people leave. They've been there for a year and a half and they feel like they've figured it out. Right. And let me just tell you this, my friends, at the 18-month mark, you're just starting to get good at your current role. Right. There's a very high likelihood that that's where you are. Right. And don't get me wrong. Can you have a good year? Of course you can. Can you have a good year? Of course. But I think a lot of people, I love your advice, which is just be smart. The best advice you have, everyone should form that, like, I want to quit my job team. Like, I love that idea of like, everyone has 3 people that they go to, they explain it, and they're the people that you don't always want to hear it from, but then you know they're going to give it straight. That is beautiful. So I'm definitely stealing that. But then for a lot of people, just understand that 9-month mark, it's totally normal to start to feel like, oh, is there something more exciting? At the 18-month mark, you know, then you're, well, am I being challenged? Like, no, at the 18-month mark, and as you go to 3 years, that's when you start to get like proficient and good. And that's when the skill building really starts to happen. And so, you know, I just always say, I've done a lot of posts that the grass usually is not greener, usually. Right. So I think if you form your dream team there, which I love that idea, you're really honest with yourself about where you're at. And like the other point you had, which is great, Amy, which is like, stick around to see where they're going. Just give it a little bit of time, you know, like just wait 3 months after the change, you know, like you never know what's on the other side. So everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. A lot of really, really great comments and questions. Amy, thank you so much. I appreciate it. This, I don't even need an emoji. This is like a real life clap. Like old school. I'm bringing it back. The real life clap. There was a pretty funny, like, there's this, oh man, I can't remember. There's this meme. This guy walks up. Walks in. Oh, when people do this is how they clap in startup land meetings. Like, oh yeah, I love that. Oh, Amy, love it. That's right. All right, everyone. Again, you can find the video on YouTube. If you want to find it on LinkedIn, you can comment, tag yourself. That makes it really easy because then you can go back and find when you've been tagged in your notifications. Thank you again. Always, if you have any questions, DM me and have a great rest of your week. Thanks again, Amy.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Quick announcement. We have invested a lot of time into YouTube, so go over to my YouTube channel, just type in Jake Dunlap, click the little bell, and you'll get notified every time we upload a video. We have over almost 300 videos now. Anything you want to know about sales, sales leadership, so get over and subscribe.